Flaps are down for takeoff. And let's see if those landing gear mods I made, I'll share those mods with you guys here at the end. Let's just see how it does. This is just the first flight out, so. Taking off. Oh wow, lifts right off. Yeah, those landing gear changes made all the difference in the world, folks.
That was easy takeoff.
Wow, really easy flying model, no stabilization in it. Wow, wow. Holy smokes, that flew excellent.
That's pretty.
Hey folks, Rich here. Welcome back to the RC Informer YouTube channel, and today I have an assembly guide on the Arrows Hobby MiG-29 Fulcrum. This is coming from Hobby Zone. You can check our links below. If you click on one of our links below, purchase the airplane. We do get a little commission through that link. We do appreciate this support. Also in the upper right hand corner where you'll see the round circle with the eye, and that'll open up in the right side of this screen in the drop down. It'll open up all the sister videos to this airplane. So your unboxing, your flight demos, everything pertaining to this airplane, and we'll usually have at least 3 to 5 videos on it, will be right up there. And you can, of course, you can check on RC Informer for the other videos. Anyway, getting this airplane together is super simple. It is almost pointless to do an assembly guide on it because these are the screws that you use to put it together, and that's it. So assembling this is easy. However, at RC Informer, we do not make any of the airplanes that you buy, but we do make many of the airplanes that you buy better, and that is what this video is all about. If you guys want to put these vertical fins on this airplane, just the way it says here with CA, have at it. That's the first step, and this is the only part that you glue on. The rest of this thing screws together. So just glue them together and go. However, in my effort to make things a little tougher on this thing, I did notice that as you know, I'm going to glue these fins on, because it is the first step, that there's plenty of contact surface to glue this together, but it's also kind of minimal. And what they did was they did mask most of the surfaces here prior to painting, so you're not gluing paint to paint, and that's the point of this, is not to glue a painted surface to a painted surface because there is minimal surface area. You want to glue foam to foam or foam to plastic. And you can see here these areas that I laid out, and you can see the difference in these two. Right along here, these are the parts that I took, what is it, packing tape, ran it across here to get the paint off of those surfaces. Same thing in the back right here. You could see where I removed it here, and that's to get, and even in the back there, even in the front, to make sure that I have the maximum contact space, or contact surface area to get this together. So removing the paint really makes this whole joint, or will make this whole joint, a lot better, so you know your vertical surface is nice and tough staying on the airplane. So you can see here what this side looks like, and this is going to demonstrate it for you pretty well. I went ahead and I took packing tape, okay, and this is how I normally remove paint from these surfaces, is I'll take packing tape, I'll put it right on that surface that I want to remove it from, and I'll peel it away, and it takes all of that paint off. So now we're going to have a nice surface to glue together. I even did here. I even did here. Now let me show you what the other side looks like that I haven't done yet. And you can see what this thing looks like. You notice here that they didn't remove really any of this surface area here, and this is pretty critical. That's a lot of area that glues this whole thing together. They did a really great job masking all of this. They did a great job masking this, so you're gluing foam to foam, and you're not gluing paint to paint. But I wanted to really clean this thing up. And again, you don't have to do all this, folks, but it's pretty simple to do. You really just take some packing tape right here, put it right on that area, and you start peeling it away little by little. There was 1 or 2 areas where I used some Gorilla Tape, and by doing that, you can see it's all coming off. If you can get this paint off of here nicely without having to sand it or distorting the shape of it using some tape of some kind, little by little, you'll end up peeling this whole thing off. Now you're going to have a really nice contact surface area. So as you glue this together with either CA, or you glue it together either with foam tack, which is what I would highly recommend using foam tack on this, it is the glue of choice, then you're going to have a much stronger structure. You're not going to be fiddling with this thing. Notice back here as well, this area right here, they didn't remove the paint. I just scraped that off with a knife because that's just a little area, and it's going to be hard to glue something on there especially if you're gluing paint to paint. It'll end up peeling off and that kind of thing. So might as well do it right. Second issue with this thing, putting the tail on, not a big deal, is that as you're doing this thing, as you're putting this thing into position, okay, they say to make this contact right here first, you know, go ahead and put your wire connector on there together first before putting this thing on. And then you're sort of in a little bit of a shoehorn situation where you got this thing connected, you're trying to get this thing in position, and it's just kind of a pain. It would be nice if you could connect it later, but there's not a lot of space down there. But here's the solution for that. All you have to do is go to the underside of the airplane before you glue this whole thing together. Go to the underside of the airplane, and with the 2 screws on the underside right here, let me see if I can get a good shot of this. Just take your cowling off. Take your engine cover off. There's 2 screws here. It'll pull right off, and just leave this wire down. That way you can go ahead and concentrate here on gluing your vertical surface on without having to mess with this connector. And then when all is said and done, then you can go ahead and make your connection and put your wire in. You can even remove your fan after the fact if you have to make a little room for this connection, and then get your connection down in there. Anyway, what that does by doing all this is it really just makes it a lot easier to get this vertical surface on without having to mess around with this connector and all that. It just makes life a lot easier putting this thing in position. Here's just one more view as you're putting this together, and you can see how much contact surface, how much surface area here you'd be gluing paint to paint on if you didn't remove the paint off of here and remove the paint off of all along here, this sidewall and back here. So you can see that all goes on nicely, and I'm going to turn it this way so you can even see on the inside here what that actually looks like. I'll zoom in on that a little bit. But as you put this into position, look at all that contact area there, again, that you would be gluing paint to paint on if you didn't remove all of that paint from right here. So same thing back in here. You can see this little area is, I'm guessing, is going to be a little bit of a nuisance because it's such a small area down here to glue onto here that, again, removing that paint is going to really make the thing bond better. Probably not removing the paint, depending on what's going on. You'll probably in time have this peel away. You'll be sticking some more glue in there and then reattaching it. So you might as well do it right the first time by getting all that paint out of there, so this thing glues together and has a really, really good good bond. Also, one more suggestion: anytime you're installing a part like this where you're going to have either a servo or a wire that's going to sort of get glued in and sort of buried into the airplane, and you can see the wire, once we glue this on here, that wire is going to be stuck in there. Anytime you have a situation like this that's going to be hard to replace after gluing it in, you really want to, if you can, check the servo ahead of time. There's nothing like having a brand new airplane where you get on occasionally you get a bad servo in there. You glue all this stuff in position only to find after plugging it in, oh, the servo's bad. Then you got to cut a hole all through here. You got to peel all this tape off, and it's a pain to replace this thing. So if you check it beforehand, you don't have to worry about that. So now lately I've been using this Spectrum XPC 100 Smart Checker. You'll see me using this at the end of every video when I'm checking batteries and stuff. But it also works as a tester as well. So if you just plug in a lithium battery, which you can see I've plugged in here, you can go down here and go to 1520 US, and then you can just press this button and look, it'll test your servo. Just make sure the full range is working. Now you can feel safe when you plug this thing in that you got a good working servo, and you're not going to have to replace it after putting it in. Now I'll put a link to this checker below the video so you guys can see where to get this, because I'm almost exclusively using this nowadays because it's really sort of a dual purpose device. I use it at the end of all my videos, as you guys can see at the end of all my videos, where I'm using it as a LiPo checker, but in this situation I'm now using it almost exclusively all the time to test servos while I'm setting up airplanes. When it comes to actually gluing the vertical stabilizer onto the airplane, here's how I did mine. And I already put the other side on, and it's on there really secure, so this way works really well. Again, for those of you that want to use CA, you can, but here's my, my foam tack method. You can see I prepped the area. I went ahead and cleaned all of that paint off, so we're not going to have paint to paint surfaces. We're going to have foam to foam surfaces. You can see how everything's all cleaned away. And the nice thing is you can put glue where all the white areas are, and you know those are going to be the contact areas. I did have to use a little bit of Gorilla type duct tape, a little bit, to pull some of this off, because I got to admit the paint was nicely applied. It's on there pretty darn good, so in some areas I had to get it off of there. But essentially, here's all we're going to do. Using a paintbrush, we're going to go ahead and do this quickly because it sets up fast. We're going to go ahead and we're going to apply the glue to all the white areas. We don't want we want a good amount, but not a whole ton. You want it to be fairly thin. You're going to do the same along here, and you want to work quickly again because it tacks up fairly fast. Then you're going to brush it, okay, and make sure that you have a nice kind of thin layer on everything, but also enough. You don't want globs of it, but you want it enough so it's not going to be just huge amounts of glue that are going to ooze out of it after you apply everything. So once we get the glue on, we're ready to put the two parts together. Now that I've applied all the glue to everything, we're ready to contact the pieces. Glue's on both sides, so we'll go ahead and install this. You start by putting just the front part of this down in there and making sure that wire is down in there. We just kind of push everything into position, and most of it's just going to be, it's pretty much down and in place and ready to kind of sit there and dry. But with foam tack, one of the things that it's good to do with is to kind of just thin it out a little bit by prying the glue actually back off again. So if you can do this very quickly, you pull it off, and you can see all those strings that form there. You want those little strings to kind of tack up, but you don't want to remove the thing completely. Those will tack up in like about a minute, and then we're going to finally secure it into place one last time with one final contact, which is where the name contact cement comes from. Now, after letting it set for a minute or two, we're ready to put everything back in place. It's all tacked up and nice and tacky, so it all should just stick together. We're going to go ahead and put it back on, and this final contact should really solidify everything in place because we've got nice tacky glue everywhere. And once we got it in place, we'll just let it set up. Now that the vertical stabilizers are glued into place, you can see how easy it is actually to make this lower connection rather than fiddling with it while you're gluing this whole thing together. Now, if you need to, you can actually unscrew the fan, just kind of move it out of the way if you need to get at this wire a little better. But you can see now we can just kind of pop that in place, and this entire thing we can just kind of put down into this this area here. Now, I'll probably run a piece of tape or something over that, maybe even a chunk of foam. But again, we're not playing around with that thing while we're actually gluing the vertical into place. And I think the whole thing just works a lot better this way, installing it this way. If you had to remove your engine covers like I did, just reinstall them and just put the two screws back into place, and we're ready to move on to the next step. As promised, it's all downhill from here. All we're going to do is insert this stabilizer and secure it in place, and then we'll just repeat it for the other side. So this thing is super nice. As you can see, it's all ball bearing supported. I already fitted it once. It goes in beautifully. It's all ball bearing supported at the factory. You just put this thing in and secure it actually with a single screw, and you can see right here where that screw is going to contact. It's going to go right into that indentation in the shaft, and that's going to keep it from pulling out. And all you got to do really is just take this thing and just put it into position. I'm just going to line it up right here. This is about the easiest tail assembly I think I've ever done. You put that right on, and then right through this hole where the screw is going to go, you just sort of sight through there before you put the screw in. Just make sure it is lined up with that that indentation in the shaft, and that's it. You tighten this up. You can feel it biting that shaft, which it is, and you're on there. Beautiful movement, very little play in this thing, just outstanding stabilizer movement. And then we're going to put the push rod in. The book does suggest putting it in not the outer but the next one in, and then just pop it into place. So I'll talk about that a little more during the flight demo and kind of see how that goes. But that's about as easy of a tail assembly that I have ever seen. So again, just duplicate this for the other side, and we're ready to move on to the wing. Attaching the wing on this airplane is about as simple as it gets. Really, all you have to do is just make these two connections right here. I usually like to wrap up everything with tape. I'll use 3M Blenderm because it's relatively thin, but it's also tacky. I'll put this down below in my my Amazon store. Should be in my Amazon store anyway. So if you look in the description for that link, that should all be there. So and then let me wrap this up here real quick. We'll get the rest of this installed. This just kind of keeps the connections from coming off. These are going to go into the wheel well. You could pull them through sort of this way if you wanted to, but also there's a tube that they probably won't fit through. And if you do want to take the wing off, you kind of want to have those connectors kind of right there. So once this is all on, you just kind of tuck the rest of these connectors back in here. And in fact, I'm going to try and leave most of these connectors, if I can, actually in the wing, so they're not, you know, protruding into the wheel well and, you know, potentially maybe getting into the landing gear mechanism, although there's not a whole lot there. And you can see, look how nice of a fit this thing is. You just put 2 screws down in here. They fit in there pretty decently. And then if you haven't lost your 2mm nut driver like I have, just simply right here, and just screw these things into place. They should line up. Sometimes you got to wiggle them around a little bit. Once you find the threads, they go in there super nicely. Let me get that this last one. They're nice metal to metal contacts and plastic to plastic with these the doublers. So the fit is super nice. And then as an option, folks, these are your missiles, which during the unboxing video I put them on sort of in reverse order. I'm going to fly without these the first time. I don't think these are side specific. They might be. I'm not 100% sure because I don't know if there's a dihedral in this wing. There may or may not be. But in either case, they're that easy to put on the airplane. It's like that simple. So my first flight, I'll do them without the missiles. The plane's going to be faster without the missiles. It's going to fly longer. It's going to be more efficient. It's also going to be harder to slow down without the missiles. So the missiles are going to add drag. They're going to slow the airplane down a little bit. They're going to make it easier to slow down. They're going to shorten your flight time a bit. So missiles are kind of hit or miss, but these are real nice ones. They go on there very well, very easily. And it's just really a nice design overall. Last but not least is the nose cone, and this is really it for the final assembly. You can see how nicely this thing is threaded. It's just an excellent design. You can take this off to transport the airplane, and hopefully that will help prevent you from breaking it off, because there's 2 kinds of pitot tubes on airplanes, as we all know. Those that have broken off and those that will. And that is it, folks. This baby's magnetic, and all you have to do is put that right on, and we are good to go. Now that the major assembly is complete, it's time to set up the cockpit area. Your receiver shelf is right here. All your plug-ins go, aileron, elevator, rudder, throttle, and then we mount that right there. But the battery compartment's right here. They do give you Velcro. It's already attached and ready to go. However, I prefer to use shelf liner with a little bit of Scotch tape on the underside. Just cut it to the length and width that you need it. Take your double-sided Scotch tape, attach it to the bottom, and then it's ready to go in. Now, I had already removed this Velcro. This is what's supplied. Feel free to use it if you like Velcro. It's great. It's just that I found that a lot of times it's hard to get the battery out of the compartment, especially with a smaller plane like this. It also takes up a lot of space. Look how thick that stuff is. So if you have a tight battery area, it actually, you know, sometimes you can't get the canopy on. Not in this case, probably, because it's a pretty tall battery compartment. But anyway, I removed this stuff and I put in shelf liner, and it's really just this simple by putting that on there. So what I'm going to do is just put it down here at the bottom. I'm going to blow out there, make sure I get all of the any debris that might be there. It might prevent this thing from sticking, but I'm just going to put this all the way down at the bottom as centered as I can between the straps, which that looks pretty good. We'll get this one on there as well, and that is about it. Then we can just kind of flatten that, just put our hands on it, and now it's secured to the bottom. The beauty of it is when you have a battery without putting Velcro and again wasting all that extra space, because it is, you can see it's pretty thick on the bottom there and it's hard to get out. The smooth surface of your battery without any Velcro on it will stick to the bottom of this thing like glue, especially when you tighten down the straps. Once it's down in place, it's very, very grippy, and it makes it much easier to shift your battery when you're setting up your CG and all that. You can easily shift it without having to, you know, tear the whole battery out of place and everything. And this is probably the Smart Technology battery I'll be using in this 3200. That's really about all this airplane needs to give you about 4 to 5 minutes of flying, and it should work out quite nicely. One last tip I have prior to signing off here, folks, is for the landing gear. Now, this landing gear is probably among some of the nicest landing gear I think I've seen on a model here recently. However, it does have a lot of E-rings. You can see the nose gear has a whole ton of E-rings. The main landing gear has a whole ton of E-rings, and that's cool. It's a great, really great design. However, it's easy when you have more of them to lose them. So what I like to do with all my planes, if you guys are watchers of my channel, RC Informer, you know that I will put a little dab of contact cement here, just right on the E-ring. If you have to, if it doesn't turn out perfectly, just wet your finger, because it won't stick to your wet finger. And just dab it on. Make a little bubble there. What that's going to do is it's going to prevent you from losing any of your E-rings and having to order another one. So I found that this works really well, and if you need to service the landing gear at all, see, sometimes it doesn't come up so great, but if you just kind of wet your finger and just kind of glob it on there, you can make like a nice little dome around there, and you have a nice it's kind of my version of like a safety pin or something, or safety wire. It really just keeps your E-ring in place so you don't lose it. And if you have to replace it, you can just peel this stuff off. It stays pretty flexible. You can take your landing gear apart, put it back together again, and then you can just kind of put another dab on there. But this will ensure that you keep all of your E-rings, and hopefully you won't have to order any lost components. Okay, folks, that pretty much concludes this video on the assembly and setup of the Aeros Hobby MiG-29 Fulcrum. Check this baby out at hobbyzone.com. Again, those links will be in the description of the video where you guys can get one. If you guys are interested in this plane, you might want to get one. I've been told that this might be I don't know if it's for sure, but this is what I've been told by the owners. This might be the last one to come in this color scheme. It may change later. So if you guys want one, get one. They're pretty awesome. I'll have the flight demo out shortly. Also in the upper right hand corner of your screen, folks, where you see the white circle with the eye in it, if you click on that now even, it'll bring up all the sister videos that go along with this, unboxing, flight demo, and so forth. So just an awesome airplane. I'm floored and blown away. Aside from gluing on the vertical surfaces, which are relatively easy, but it is a little bit of a glue job, the rest of this airplane, as you can see from the video, is just cake to put together. Just so easy to assemble, and the quality, detail, fit and finish of this airplane are just outstanding. So I am dying to get this one out and fly the heck out of it for you guys, and I will that'll be here shortly. So anyway, folks, be sure to I appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, leaving your comments. Click the notification below to get notifications of the new videos coming out. I appreciate you guys watching RC Informer, and as always, we will see you next time.